Next on the program is the keynote speech. We have Representative Director of Horie Research and Advisory, Non-Executive Director of Mitsubishi UFJ Asset Management, Mr. Sadayuki Horie, to talk about the next step for Japanese asset owners. Please give him a round of applause. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'd like to talk about the asset building nation and the theory behind it, and I'd like to talk about my experience as a pension consultant. And from 2017 to 2022, for 5 years, I have supervised GPIF. So based on this experience, I'd like to talk about the next step for Japanese asset owners, the expectations that I have for asset owners in the future, and this is my own private view that I'll be expressing. First of all, talking about asset building nation, I'm sure you're aware, in 2023, in June, the Japanese government came up with this and announced this. And I'd like to talk about asset owners today, so I'd like to talk about what is at the bottom, asset ownership reform, which was published as well. So based on all of this, last year on the 13th of December, an announcement was made, which was on the third page, reform for asset ownership. With a view to doing so in the summer, asset owner principles will be coming out. I don't know what will come out, but corporate pension people are quite interested and concerned about this. The second is a reform of corporate pensions. A defined benefit corporate pensions reform is being discussed. In particular, FSA's report includes asset management capabilities and the need to upgrade this. And I believe this is a major point of discussion. I would like to go into this in more detail later. The government's position, and in response to this, the thinking on the part of the asset owners is there's quite a gap between the two. And end of September, the Corporate Pension Federation did an interview of corporate pension involved persons. And from what I hear, what is indicated in red, that is DB pension people's views are summarized here. And what they're saying is don't make a fuss about it because we are doing what we have to do. And that is what is stated here. The asset owner principle was discussed, but with regard to DB corporate pensions, fiduciary responsibility is very well established. Low risk, low return. Overseas corporate pensions find themselves in the same position under the name of fiduciary responsibility between management and employee agreement. The funding ratio has been determined and it's complied with to secure the entitlements is something that they are doing, and they don't want outsiders to talk about it. In a nutshell, this is what is stated here, and that's the position of the corporate pension people. And I believe what is stated here is quite correct. In the past 20 years, the environment has changed, and this is in accordance with that change in the environment. To briefly state what is inside us on page 5, The corporate retirement benefit accounting was introduced, and with a pension fund agreement and the sponsoring entity, a low risk, low return investment management has been established. That is what I think. And the sponsoring company's balance sheet is such that corporate pensions performance have a large sway. And because there was a change here in the system between labor management, there was an agreement and an optimum solution came about, and it was continued. And that is the present status. That is what I think. The point is whether in the past 20 years, what has been done in the past 20 years was considered to be the correct answer. But in the future, when the environment changes, will it still remain optimal? And I have some questions about this. What the FSA is saying is not what I'm denying. What has been done up until now is correct, but going forward with the changing environment, is it really the optimal? And I think there's a need to revisit that, as is stated here. What are we managing the pension system for? In a nutshell, to secure outstanding people, employees, human resources, the securing of superior human resources. If just looking at the entitlements and the securing of entitlements perhaps may not be sufficient to deal with the change in environment. And I think we need to rethink this. And on page 6, I talk about inflation rate and wage increase rate. And within this context, we need to look at whether what we have been doing is correct and whether we should continue to do what we have been doing. When interest rates go up, the funding ratio improves. That's how it works. So the funding premium, the pension premium, and the assumed interest rate, if this remains the same, the sponsoring companies and pension funds and labor unions with a high likelihood will continue what they're doing at the present. But as you know, with inflation rate going up, originally a long-term retirement pay without losing its value should be distributed. So if the funding rate is high and if they say that entitlements are being secured, is that really correct? Is what they're doing correct? The average assumed interest rate is about 2%. And it cannot keep up with the inflation rate, the recent rates of inflation. And this situation is about to start. So in the deflationary environment, what was optimal may not be optimal going forward. And so I have some issues here personally. As for Financial Instruments and Services Act, last year on the 20th of November, it has been revised, and in it, customers' best interests should be considered. That is mentioned here, and that applies to asset owners in terms of the system. And this is about employees in the future having retirement pay that would enable them to enjoy life after retirement. And I think this is the meaning of what is stated here. And so what is it that we should be doing amidst the circumstances? I've talked about corporate pension stakeholders about this, and I feel that there are several points that should be improved. First of all, the FIEA revision, and the purpose of that is not targeted at corporate pension funds. It's about designing the pension system, and it's a recommendation for the sponsoring company. So to the sponsoring company, corporate pension management disclosure would be made obligatory. And this would be very important to secure employees. And it's very beneficial in comparing different corporate pension systems, its advantages and disadvantages. And as I mentioned under number 3, for the sponsoring company and the corporate pension fund itself, what was considered optimal in terms of constructing portfolio has to be revisited as to whether it meets the design standards which was initially intended, and there are some doubts about whether it does. Corporate pension funds, rather than targeting these, it's targeted at sponsoring companies that are actually designing the system. And as I indicated under number 5, in areas other than investment, there are different changes which are warranted. One is risk-bearing corporate pension schemes. The naming is probably not very good, I think. What this means is it's a collective DC, a group DC. The funding ratio has to be in alignment with the present situation, reading the buffer to protect against downside risk, and where the return is high, that has to be provided to the employees. And we need to think about such a change in the system. And information disclosure, making this more substantial. If just comparing returns is not appropriate, so other than the returns, what I've mentioned, including the system design aspect, everything has to be made clear for comparison. And that is in alignment with the original intention to provide sufficient retirement pay to the employees. From that standpoint, I think this is very important. That is in relation to the system to become an asset-building nation. That is my own personal view on this subject. Next, on the issue, expectations related to investment. I'd like to briefly touch upon this. Asset owners, $3.3 trillion is the number which was cited by Mr. Aritomo. A huge amount is being invested. We could talk about asset owners. We exclude insurance companies, but here there are different types of asset owners. You have GPIF, which I work for, and then there's a PFA, university funds, and then there are other mutual aid pensions. And on the next page, you have corporate pensions. But other than corporate pensions, you have large asset owners of this nature. And as I mentioned here, each has unique characteristics. So asset owners are diverse in terms of their investment style. GPIF I'll be referring to later on, but the Corporate Pension Federation is an entity of which I know personally some of the individuals working there, and there are high-level people. And with regard to basic portfolio, a large excess return. In the past 20 years, over 70 basis points of excess returns have been realized. So they have a very high skill set. And such corporate funds have generated a lot of excess return. And as for other mutual aids, perhaps this is rather a derogatory way of referring to them, including signing of the PRI, we have been asked to do that. 70 trillion yen of assets exist here. And in terms of investment, I believe there are major challenges and issues. The Corporate Pension Federation, GPIF, have no people seconded from financial institutions, and on the investment side, there are no government officials being seconded. On the management side, there are some of these people. On the investment side, however, these are purely professional personnel. And as for other mutual aid persons, there are people seconded from the supervising government, and there are people seconded from financial institutions. It's a mixed group. And there's a lot of rotation, and they find it difficult to upgrade the skill set. And when the senior management changes, the investment style changes. It's the same for GPIF, but such challenges exist within the asset building nation. To largely change the investment style is something that where there is a high expectation for. And on this page, corporate pension funds is being addressed. Large-size corporate pension funds and those less than large, where the asset is smaller. Between the two, I believe the investment process is totally different. That's my understanding. And so, large corporate pension stakeholders, I personally know some of them, have a high investment skill set for the most part. In the asset building nation discussion, I don't think the skill set poses a major problem. But the smaller companies where asset size is less than 10 billion yen, under the general administrator, investment takes place. Whether the outsourced CIO is better or where the administrator should be used. In terms of statistics, there is nothing that verifies outsourced CI is better, the FSA says, but you can't make a blanket statement about this. I think, in any case, this is an area where a large change is warranted. So there are asset owners with diverse characteristics, and it's a mixed group. So what kind of investment style is being called for in the future is something I'd like to address based on my experience at GPIF. I'd like to make several proposals. GPIF, until March of 2020 and April of 2022, there have been a change in the planning entity, and the executing staff has been largely reshuffled, and there was a change in style. If you look at the very right-hand side of this graph, or the second from the right, excess return to the base portfolio, it was such that after 2020 April, there has been a decent number compared to the period preceding that. And that is a major characteristic. It's a small number, you might say, but the 10 basis point, that's 200 billion yen. So if you, in terms of 1 year, it's a difference of 700 billion or so. So such a large alpha was generated in excess in comparison to the period before March of 2020. So in a nutshell, to the medium-term goal, if they are loyal to achieving the medium-term objectives, I believe the people who assumed the leadership here was very loyal about achieving the objectives and goals. And here I indicate what has changed in a nutshell. As Mr. Ueda has mentioned, the risk management, there is strict risk management in place, and very rigorous risk management. When you say it, it may sound easy, but 220 trillion to realize the basic portfolio is not an easy thing to do. They are making the effort to actually regenerate that, and the risk control is different from previous times. Aside from active risk, they are basically in control, and risk management being made rigorous was the change after April of 2020. And the challenge is last year in November, Mr. Ueda at the Global Fiduciary Forum said something which is written here. In 2022, since October of 2022, I think it's been 17 years it was done before, active managers have been employed. And it's related to today's emerging manager program. Regardless of whether they're based in Tokyo or not, a high excess return is being generated by these managers. And using quantitative new methods, they're being employed, and this is being continued to this day. It's been only a little over a year since this has started, but for the moment it's working quite well. This is something that Mr. Ueda mentioned at the forum. Different managers of different kinds, I think, will be hired going forward. And personally, I have several companies that I wish to see make inroads into Japan. And the next basic portfolios, these are subjects that can be addressed. But in a nutshell, GPIF must be loyal to its objectives and goals, and they should confirm their raison d'etre and to upgrade their organization. In a nutshell, I think this is what they're doing. I had very short experience at the GPIF, but based on my experience, I've talked about my expectations for different asset owners. There are 3 points I'd like to raise. The first is making clear investment criteria. What is the purpose for which the asset owners are making investments? That is not very clear in the case of GPIF. The basic portfolio is traced, and if there's no excess return, there's no reason for being. So they're quite aware of this in their investment. What is the purpose of investment? Is it about following the basic portfolio and generating excess return? I think there are different objectives which are possible. To clarify that, I think would be very important. And secondly, this is about specialization. How professional are the asset owners, and how professional should they be, and what's the skill set required? Personally, I think that the asset owners with high skill sets in different respects have a high probability of attaining the goal. I think there's a high correlation. So it's not doing the same thing all the time. I think it's about improving skill sets. And thirdly, improving governance. In a nutshell, the asset owners, the people in charge of the fund, must take responsibility. And the sponsor companies, asset owners, plan sponsors' intentions, of course, need to be considered. But based on this, the selection in terms of selecting the managers, they have to take ownership. They have to take responsibility to engage in activities and to be accountable. That's governance improvement, which I think is necessary. So if the governance is improved, they will begin to know what they need to do, what is necessary. And so improvement of governance and enhancing expertise, knowing what skill sets are required. This should be considered in a package. And so to the asset owners, I would ask that they make improvements on these three fronts. So I have been very brief, but I have talked about what the next step for Japanese asset owners, and this is my own personal view. Thank you very much for your kind attention.